Okay, so for those, I don't know how much you guys know about us, but we are an organization that started in 2015, in the summer of 2015, so we're about 5 years old. And I'm going to just move us, we've talked about what's a good team, and I'm going to summarize very quickly what our mission is, but basically we care a lot about gas safety and gas leaks, and so this shows all of the horrible pipes that are distributing our gas underground, and the fact that there's 1 million leaks, not really, there's about 16,000 in Massachusetts. And so we worry a lot about that and figuring out how to solve that in terms of emissions and also repairs. There's several people on this call who do a ton on this. And then we also are thinking about what's a just transition. How can we transition our state from gas to some way to heat homes in a renewable way? And HEET has come up with an incredibly innovative idea to use network geothermal, so that instead of using those horrible pipes that transport gas that's explosive, that they'll use water. And the reason why the word just is in there is because I think the Gas Leaks Allies have really coalesced around this idea that it's not just about transitioning gas, but it's in how we do it and making sure that we are including everybody, that the folks who are low income and in environmental justice communities have access to clean heat, and also that we are including labor, and that labor is part of this transition. So that is, in a nutshell, what the Gas Leaks Allies is about. So now I'm going to transition the discussion to sort of how we operate and how we come to be. So actually, I'm going to first tell you what we have accomplished so that you can see sort of the action part of this. But what we've accomplished in the last 5 years, the first thing is we've passed a lot of legislation. 2016, the requirement to fix the big gas leaks, that's what Audrey was referring to. If we could fix the small percentage of big gas leaks, we could cut emissions by 50%, and DOM is leading the way on that for HEET. In 2018, we passed legislation on lost and unaccounted for gas, which is all utility companies say, oh, we lost some gas, but how they count it is different. And so we've been very actively involved in figuring out where that lost gas is coming from. And then in 2020, there are key components that haven't passed yet, but that we're hopeful that will pass, that are around gas safety and also this transition to allow for gas companies to provide energy that provide heat that doesn't come from gas. So that's been super awesome. And then we've had community impact in that we have involved 40 cities and towns across Massachusetts in learning about this and supporting this legislation. We passed the Boston Gas Leaks Ordinance that would force utility companies to fix gas leaks. Of course, we got a lawsuit, and so that didn't go very far, but it's all part of the education process. And of course, we are working very closely with Lawrence after the gas explosions, and will be continuing to work there on helping them transition to renewable energy. On the regulation front, this is a lot thanks to HEET as part of our allies group, but also Sierra Club and several other people in the allies. But when we first started, nobody really paid attention to advocates, and I would say now they want the participation of our participation, and we are, it's HEET's methodology for how to measure big leaks, and also how to measure the lost and unaccounted for gas. So not only are we passing the legislation, but trying to come up with the rules on how that works. Relationships with very uncommon allies. Most advocates are going to be fighting and working to change the system, but not really reaching out to the people who maybe they don't have complete agreement with. And we have made a big effort to work with gas workers so that this transition includes labor, and with the utility companies. So understanding that if the utility, it's kind of like one of those things, where do you rob a bank because that's where the money is? You have a relationship with utility companies because they're the ones that can move the fastest. And then the final thing is around safety. We produced a beautiful report called Rolling the Dice in response to the Merrimack Valley explosions. Sarah Griffith was a big part of that. And really outlining what are the things that the state could be doing to make safety a priority in Massachusetts. So this is sort of like what we've accomplished many other things, but this is just to give you a feeling for what the Gas Leaks Allies have done together. Again, we're like 25 different organizations, so it's nice that we've been able to achieve this. And so a little history on us, I want to give credit. One of the things about Gas Leaks Allies I think that works well is that everybody contributes, and you got to make sure that you acknowledge the people for their contributions. So I'd like to say that long before the Gas Leaks Allies, Bob Ackley blows the whistle on gas leaks killing trees. He then meets Professor Nathan Phillips, and this is going to be like in 2008. And they find out, Nathan Phillips finds out that he's a tree physiologist, finds out that gas kills trees. And so here's an example. You see all the green trees behind it. Here's an example of a beautiful Newton tree with gas in the root zone that neighbors called and called and called and was never fixed because it wasn't considered explosive. So this is, the history starts with gas killing trees. Then Nathan reaches out to the Barr Foundation to get funded to do research to truly understand gas leaks. And he publishes this incredible study that says, oh my gosh, we have leaks everywhere. So they team up with, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but that's Rep. Lori Ehrlich. And she starts to try to get legislation passed to get leaks on the books. And in 2014, and this is going to be a collaboration of HEET and Conservation Law Foundation and Bob and Nathan and Lori, passed legislation that says utility companies have to say where their leaks are. So Audrey comes into the scene and she says, oh my gosh, look at those, imagine the list. This is what National Grid gives out, and how can you do that? So Audrey has the brilliant idea to turn it into maps. And that is the beginning of people being able to find out if they have leaks near their home, near their school, near their everything. And it was really a game changer. Then an article comes out in 2015. And this article basically says, well, there's enough gas in the air to heat 200,000 homes a year and $90 million a year. And it's in the globe, it has huge impact. And around this time, Mothers Out Front is being formed. And so people Mothers Out Front, including me, read this article and we're so horrified, we are like ready to chomp at the bit. And so the first thing we do is we reach out in a meeting to the experts. And so Mothers Out Front reaches out to HEET and Boston Climate Action Network, Clean Water Action, who it's Joel, and Sierra Club. And we have a first meeting of like, this is outrageous, what are we gonna do? And that is the beginning of the Gas Leaks Allies. At the time, we weren't called that. But the goal at the time was just to have a hearing in Boston City Hall so that we would call attention to gas leaks. And that was our first goal. And so we had to educate people and get people on board. And then in the last 5 years, we have grown to this. And it's people, it's individuals, it's researchers, it's health professionals, lawyers. It is groups, all, advocates, and all of us working together to be able to achieve what we did before. So this is a big picture view of sort of what the Allies has done and what we've become in the last 5 years. And now the rest of this discussion, I would just focus on sort of the things that I think work with the Allies, and then maybe transition to some of the challenges. So a lot of the stuff you guys said is what I think works. Common goals and a shared purpose. Every single year we have done this. We have said, okay, obviously we're all about climate change, but really trying to figure out what are our goals so that we can work together toward our goals. We have a relational structure. And again, it goes back to, I think John talked about how important relationships were. It is all about relationships. And I will try to show you a picture that draws that the way I see it. And maybe other people can agree or disagree with me on whether it really is that way. We structure meetings. We pay a lot of attention to what goes into a meeting agenda. And then we, the most important thing, in my opinion, is our values and our norms. And I'm gonna go into that in a little bit. So I'm gonna start with, here is a goal setting meeting. And the reason why this is important is because you can see people are having a lot of fun. And you'll see up on the board, this is when we were meeting in person. Everybody gets to brainstorm, we set the goals together, we have joint purpose, we prioritize, you can see the little red dots on the pages. And the idea between the brainstorming and making sure, it's all about making sure that everyone on the team agrees with the direction we're heading in, because you can, if you don't know where you're going, you can't go there. So a lot of what we've done every year is, what are we trying to accomplish this year? And that's sort of where Audrey's story of, you know, we're going to cut gas by 50%. And now it's become much more elaborate than this, and we have many goals, and it's much more complex and difficult. But it started with single goals and then achieving them every year, passing legislation and doing things like that. And I think this is an essential part of us, which is we are very action driven. And so when we have goals, we can come up with action plans and then celebrate when we achieve them. So that's the goal setting part. On the structure, this is the part goes a little crazy, because this is my view of the world, and we'll see if you guys agree. So this is how I see the world. I see that every one of us is a little dot, and we have connections with other dots and other networks. And so look at us all happy people out there. The Gas Leaks Allies only has people like this. No, just kidding. But the idea is that there's all these people on these networks, and we're all connected in different ways. And so the Gas Leaks Allies is a table that comes together and puts some of those people, some people are in the circle, some people are not, but we're all connected. And we not only bring ourselves, but we bring all our connections when we come to a meeting. And so we do have a central team of 5 people, and that central team does come up with what's on the agenda and sort of follow up and making sure work gets done. But really a lot of our work happens in like maybe a central team person and some people on the allies, and then we consult an expert from the outside. Or we can have, you know, a team that we set up, like Claire Corcoran has a tree group, and so she might get some of the people from the allies, but then she's going to go out to a lot of people on the outside. And then I don't know if you're going to be able to see this because of where the, let me see if I move this. And then if there's some people out there who can't join the Gas Leaks Allies because they're so busy on this other huge network that they're working on. So maybe we have a connection to that busy network. And so really it is all about relationships and how we all work together. And it's very fluid. And this is wonderful in that it's relationship based, but it's also can be messy and sometimes not as clear. So I'm gonna move on. So that is how we are structured now. And as we're heading into bigger and bigger work, we're gonna probably have to create more work groups to deal with the workload. So then in terms of structured meetings, my background is as a management consultant. And so I am a big believer in agendas and figuring out what the outcomes are. Not necessarily like you're not deciding on what's the decision that's going to be made, but you want to leave the meeting with a decision. Like I'm very clear when I go into a meeting, I want to leave with X, Y, Z, and not knowing what that answer is, but knowing that that's what's going to be the outcome of that meeting. We try very hard, and it doesn't always work, to prioritize discussion, brainstorming, and decision-making in the meeting. Particularly my coordinator, Debbie New, who's fantastic, is very good at making sure that we are not making decisions for the group without the group. So we very much try to have the whole group make decisions in a consensus kind of way. Also, it's an opportunity for information sharing. And initially, when we were a teeny tiny group, it was very easy. Everybody just said what they were doing. Now it's really complicated because we're so big, and so it can take a lot of time. But it is a huge opportunity for people to connect on what's going on. And then I see meetings, for me, a successful meeting is when a lot of people talk and not the same people. And again, this is very hard because some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, and some people love to chat. So super challenging and super, super challenging on Zoom. But for me, I leave a meeting and I think it was good if a lot of people on the call talked. And then the key final thing is to follow up and to know what your action items are and to make sure that you're following up that those action items are completed. Some are more important than others, but you have to follow up. So that's what I think is important. And then here's the most important part, and I will speak to it, but then I'll share some pictures. We are a team, which goes back to what you all were saying, and every single person is valued. And I think the founding philosophy that Debbie and I have, which is that that everybody has something to add. And so it's a matter of figuring out how they fit. And as we grow, that gets more and more complicated. It's also that it's a safe space to participate. I can't tell you, one of my happiest things about the Gas Leaks Allies is that people disagree. I am in so many meetings where nobody will disagree there, but then they'll disagree outside of the room. It drives me crazy. I just say it in the meeting. So because we have these relationships, I think some people are more comfortable than others, but that we do have a few people who speak up and say that doesn't make sense to me. Dependability and trust. I think we have a group of people that we all depend on each other, and we realize that we can't do this without each other. And so people step up and do what they said they were going to do, and that's been great. We're willing to work with anyone who's willing to be part of the solution. This is very rare, because some people are like, well, we won't work with them because they did this or that. And we literally are willing to work with anyone if they want to solve this issue. Data and expertise matters. We're very careful about that. And whenever there's data that we're not confident in, we don't cite it, or we make sure our letters have citations, our comment letters. Environmental justice is central to transition. And this is sort of a core belief that we can't just, that we have to remember frontline communities when we are making plans, and really incorporate frontline communities. Sense of humor and kindness, I would say, is my favorite part of our group. There are a lot of funny people and a lot of kind people. And then we try to celebrate success. And so now I'm going to just share a few little pictures to give you all a feeling of how these norms play out. So we testify and send comment letters, but the thing that's cool about when we testify is that everybody testifies. And so everybody shares their expertise. And in this example, you'll see all different people associated with the Gas Leaks Allies. Up here at the top is one of the first sharings. It's Sierra Club, HEET, Clean Water Action, CLF. I mean, this is Mothers Out Front. Each one is, we try to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and that we include people's views in comment letters. Then we show up, and here, that this is a big thing. This is what Mothers Out Front could offer in the beginning, because when we were just learning about gas leaks, we would show up, we'd put on our t-shirts and show up. But this is, we reach out to all our people, and most of our hearings and anything that we've done with legislation, we make sure the room is always packed. We involve our organizations. Here's Mothers Out Front. Mothers Out Front was an early, this is Sharon, I think, and Zainab came, their team, that Cambridge team that Zainab commented on, came up with the idea of tagging gas leaks, and that spread like wildfire. And people started to tag gas leaks and make it visible and involve moms. And this was a big key to getting the word out there in a way that was, you know, the Gas Leaks Allies weren't directly responsible, but those moms came to the hearing, that first hearing we held in Boston. And so that was a great way for our alliance to have more impact. And now here's we use data. So this is the piece of data that said, hey, 7% of leaks are 50% of methane. We were in the middle of a legislative session, and we pivoted from the legislation we were working on to focusing on, let's just fix the big leaks. And this happened like maybe 4 months before the legislation was voted on in a 2-year cycle. Bob Ackley and Nathan, but this is a Bob Ackley article, this is the natural gas leaks and trees. Like, it's not just that he looks at them. He did like an incredible case control study on showing that gas is killing trees. Zainab and Audrey and all of HEET is really focused on data. And so they looked at the reports the gas utilities were coming up with of all of the pipes that are going to change. And that is the pipes that are being changed the next 5 years. And they realized, oh my God, we have to come up with a solution as fast as possible. And they came up with the idea of network geothermal, but they first hired a consulting company to come in and say, is it possible? Is it feasible to do this in Massachusetts? So a lot of the direction we go in is using data. There's many, many more examples, But I just wanted to sort of say we are very data and expert driven. We also have a fabulous sense of humor. This is our first, I think, funny thing we did, which was we celebrated the birthday of a 30-year-old leak in Boston, and we got to be in the Boston Globe. And this was really awesome because it was right before the Boston hearing, and so a lot of people made fun of it. And there, we had to use a fake match, which Audrey is holding, so that it wouldn't blow up. So that was our first thing. We also had this in Boston, which was a really fun event. And this was to get National Grid to pay attention to us because they weren't paying attention to us and they weren't returning our calls. So we created a Twitter campaign, and we actually trended on Twitter in Boston that day, targeting National Grid, saying, National Grid, meet with us about your gas leaks. And this was at noon, and by 8 p.m. we had a call from them saying, fine, we'll talk. And the threat of doing this, Zainab meeting with the president of Eversource and saying, well, this is what we're going to do. So like, you can either talk to us or that's what we're going to do. And so they agreed to talk to us so that we wouldn't do this to them. So just to show how important these things are. And then going back to a cute Mothers Out Front example, here are some cute kids selling lemonade stand with making a hole in the bottom to say, hey, that's not right. Like, what? Why are we paying for gas that's leaking? And so they had a leaky lemonade stand. So these are just a few examples of cute things. And now I want to just move into Lawrence, because that is, we talked about centering our community around, like our work around environmental justice. And when the gas explosions happened, Nathan and Zainab really jumped in and said, oh my gosh, we have to help the people in Lawrence through this horrible thing, and started this idea of handing out cooktops, so that because people had gas stoves, they could no longer cook or heat water. HEET got a donation for 500 cooktops, and the group on our left, we teamed up with a lot of people in the Merrimack Valley to hand out cooktops. We had the awesome opportunity to meet Ana Javier in the bottom right, and she has become an extraordinary ally and was testified for our legislation to transition off of gas. And this is, I think, where we will be spending a lot of our time, making sure that Lawrence is one of the places that gets clean energy. And then, remember when I told you we collaborate with unusual people? So we teamed up with the gas leaks, with National Grid and Eversource and Columbia Gas. And this is really to figure out, do a study, again, more back to data, on how do you find a big leak and show that the utility company isn't doing such a great job and that there may be another methodology. And through this collaboration, they came up with a new methodology and proposed it to the DPU. And that's now the new regulation, which is really cool. But we also are really worried about working with the gas utilities, because they also do things that we don't like, as is shown with what's happening in Weymouth. And so we have a Grumpy Dogs group that advises anybody meeting with utilities to make sure that we are not crossing any lines in terms of how we work with them, and we punish them if they misbehave. And so here's an example of National Grid saying that they were going to fix the big leaks, but they weren't fixing the big leaks. So we created this circle around a big gas leak in front of the Attorney General's office. We hired a drone, and we have this thing that says National Grid measure up, #fix big gas leaks. That was in the Globe. And I think within 24 hours, Audrey got an email from National Grid saying, okay, fine, we'll start fixing those gas leaks and we'll send you a list of all our big gas leaks. And so we try to play good cop, bad cop, and sort of stay honest about what we care about. So that's on that side. And then this is just one little picture of, after the Future Act hearing, we held a pizza party, and we try to bring people together to celebrate whatever we are doing, because I think that creates relationships and a sense of accomplishment, and it's really wonderful way to have a community. So that is like all the norms. And so now I'm going to unfortunately go on to the things that I think are challenges. Communication. the more, I mean, like being able to communicate between all of us is really hard. And we try to do it through emails, but people get too many emails. And so that's a challenge. Growth. If you have new people coming in, how do you keep the norms that you have? How do you engage new people in a way that is, that people feel like they're part of the team? We have bottlenecks with some people who have more expertise and have been on the team for a long time. And meeting management gets really hard. If you remember, I love to have it when everybody talks in a meeting. And if you have 25 people in a meeting, that's not always possible. We also have the issue with personalities and styles. Everybody learns differently, and some people think we go too fast, some people think we go too slow. And so you have to try to tailor that and try to meet, do as well as you can for the group, but it's a real challenge. And then as we get more into this, prioritizing our interests, there's a lot of ideas for what we should be doing. So how do we prioritize and how we organize ourselves to do it is a challenge. And then finally, we are all about relationships. And so when we used to have the Gastric Alliance meetings in person, literally everybody stayed for the half hour later to chit chat and problem solve and figure out what else they were going to do that came up at the meeting. And now we don't have that because we're on Zoom. So I think that is a summary